Fallout is back this week with the penultimate episode of Season 2, and I think this could be one of the best episodes in the season. The opening scene with Steph fleeing Canada and connecting back to the reveal that we had way back at the start of the season. The Congresswoman being the source of the mainframe for the automated man device, and the parallels between Ghoul and Lucy as they're now more similar than different and both want the same end goal. This season is shaping up to be a really strong one. So with that, let's take a look at the episode and break down all the important details from why the Congresswoman's head was still in Vegas, what Steph's plan is, and also what's going on with Thaddeus. Here is Fallout Season 2 Episode 7 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The Congresswoman's head. During this episode, after Barb had learned to side with Cooper and came to the decision that the way to save their family was to save the world instead of destroying the world and hiding out in a vault, Cooper met with the Congresswoman and essentially told her that his biggest issue with her and the people buying into what she says is that she doesn't have the ability to sell the message that she's spreading, even though it's the one that's right. We saw at the Veterans Awards ceremony that nobody was really listening to her, and we also saw in the previous episode when she was protesting against Vault-Tec and Robert House that she was simply thrown out of Vegas and she was viewed as too weak. This weakness that she has ultimately stems from the fact that she's too nice, and she openly said that herself when she was speaking with Cooper. This is most likely why her head was being used by Hank inside of Vegas. I'm presuming that because she's the type of person that doesn't have much aggression within her, is nice, soft, calm, and is a relatively easy person to take control of, her head, or her brain specifically, could be what's programming the mainframe for the devices, ultimately allowing all of the people that get the automated man technology connected to them to resemble the personality that she had. The lack of fight within her, the lack of resistance, and the lack of ability to push back against anything made her the perfect candidate to be at the heart of the programming. So that could be why her head was essentially connected to it. It also makes the scenes that we saw in the earlier episodes where she was viewed as weak seem far more important now and have a greater purpose. When Cooper met with the president, essentially the leader of the Enclave, and he gave him the cold fusion, the Congresswoman said that she'd put the power of cold fusion in the hands of the public. But it now doesn't seem like that's going to be the case in the slightest. It's very much looking like the trigger-happy president of the United States might well end up using the cold fusion for a completely different reason and could be connected to the dropping of the bombs, not Vault-Tec, not Robert House, but the Enclave. It even makes me wonder if the president is connected to the automated man technology and why the Congresswoman's head ended up there. Cooper, Max, and Thaddeus. Like every week, this was probably my favorite arc in the entire episode. Cooper, Max, and Thaddeus actually make a good trio because they're all quite different, but their personalities work well together. With Max holding the cold fusion and him wanting to give it to Lucy, Cooper took them to get weapons and armor because they'd be coming up against the likes of Deathclaws and they couldn't just stroll in there. That level of fear that was in Ghoul's eyes when he came face to face with a Deathclaw took me right back to when he saw one for the first time when in Alaska. It's actually the only time you ever really see him with fear in his eyes, so it always lands hard. With Max giving Cooper the cold fusion, we saw him enter Robert House's suite in Vegas that he went to all of those years ago, and once he was in there, with him putting the cold fusion inside of the system, it booted up. The console switched on and Robert House appeared onto the screen, which showed that he was actually still alive, but not alive in the way that we originally thought he would be. He was essentially a consciousness that was uploaded onto a computer, and he did it this way for a few different reasons. Robert House needed a way of outlasting humanity, especially due to the Great War, so by uploading himself to a computer system, it meant that he'd gain immortality that way. Plus, as well as that, he was programmed into the Lucky 38 defense grid, which was able to neutralize the missiles that were headed towards Las Vegas, so he could save the city. And as well, it also meant that he was able to protect himself against assassinations, as he didn't have a body. So it's going to be interesting to see Cooper and House reunited in this different form, both looking completely different. I also think it's safe to say that Thaddeus isn't a ghoul. Honestly, when his arm fell off, that had me in absolute pieces, and the look that Cooper gave him where he was almost disgusted by it was just as funny. It's hard to say what Thaddeus is, but a ghoul is something that he definitely isn't. A centaur super mutant seems to be the very thing that it could be pointing towards, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Lucy and Hank. Lucy's story in this episode was very much a will she or won't she. She was on the moral fence about whether or not she was siding with her father in supporting the rollout of the automated man, but in the same breath, because Lucy's a good person at her core, there was a large part of her that thought making these automated slaves and taking away their right to free thought was cruel. She originally wanted to shut down the mainframe, but when seeing one of the people from the Legion last week that tried to kill her, now smithing, mopping the floor and in a completely calm state, she thought that maybe the device was something that had benefits to it, so it made her put her plan on ice. By the end of the episode, she was wearing a dress which to me symbolized that Hank had almost gained control of her without the need for a device. The song Daddy's Little Girl was also playing in the background as they were eating dinner together, so in my mind, I felt like Lucy's mind was going to be fully changed and the transformation that she went under mentally would have been cemented. However, right at the end of the episode, when she saw that Hank was also using them as his personal slaves to serve dinner and pour drinks, and the fact that they also couldn't really remember anything from when they were on the wasteland, her mind became altered and she handcuffed Hank to the oven and went to destroy the mainframe. This firmly puts Lucy back on the side of Cooper, and the division between her and her father is something that'll become apparent again during the finale. With Norm, his story was the one that was on the back burner the most in this episode, and following Ronnie overhearing Norm speaking about the fact that he wasn't who he said he was knocked out and now being held as their prisoner. He was even being threatened with the punishment of death because that was in the handbook. However, when he was rescued, he briefly spoke over the comms to Lucy and to Hank and asked what it is that he had planned for the vaults and why it is that Hank never said anything to him. You could almost hear Norm's heart breaking as he said that, but with him finding out about the forced evolutionary virus, I wonder if that could be the very thing that ends up being put inside of the vaults. In a contained area, it'll spread like wildfire, so I guess we'll find out in the finale. What's Steph's plan? The opening scene of the episode was actually quite interesting. We saw Steph inside of Canada being hunted down and chased, and after her mother was wounded by the attack, she said to her how she should look to get south of the border and find a new way of life. Her mother raised Steph as a Catholic, but in her dying moments, she told her to forget all of that and essentially become a killer. Steph was told to not view the people south of the border as humans, but instead as Americans. There had always been a rivalry between America and Canada in this universe, and it mainly came from the fact that the Canadians were resistant to US control during the pre-war energy crisis, especially when the United States was running low on resources. The US viewed Canada as Little America, which is what we saw during the images over the credits, and that pretty much confirmed the mindset that the Americans had towards them. They didn't care about Canada being its own independent country and were just looking to take control and drain them of resources. With Steph getting south of the border and quite literally becoming a killer, the fact that she killed somebody for a tin of pork and beans showed the deep-rooted hatred that Canadians had for the Americans. Steph was seen with Cooper in Vegas as it seemed like she'd gotten a job at Lucky 38. This showed that she had a wider plan. She asked Cooper how she'd go about getting a spot inside of one of the vaults, and with her ultimately getting inside of the vault, it meant that her plan was obviously successful. She also requested from Betty the box that Hank had inside of Vault 31, and with Hank being aware of a plan that was going to harm the people inside of the vaults. The rich Americans that were able to afford safe haven inside of a vault whilst the rest of the population were harmed, and even her own kind, the Canadians, suffered. They make the perfect subjects for her to target to get revenge. However, with Chet finding Woody's glasses inside of the garbage disposal, it insinuated that she was definitely involved in his disappearance. During the wedding, because there were witnesses there, it gave Chet the confidence to speak out in front of everybody. The funny thing was, the fact that she was accused of murder was something that didn't really faze them, but the moment that it was revealed that she was Canadian, that was the turning point. When she was running through the hallway to her office, the flashbacks that she was having from when she escaped Canada showed that she was now back in that same frame of mind that she felt when she was escaping all of those years ago. However, now, with peace being the thing that Betty wanted, and Steph saying that that was out of her control, I wonder if her plan to disrupt the vaults and punish the people that were there is going to grind to a halt, or if it's now going to be accelerated. My review of the episode. This episode is up there as one of my favourite episodes of the season. It had action embedded within it, it had revelations that changed the story massively, it had strong performances, and it did the very thing that I feel it struggled with throughout the entirety of Season 2. And that was to bridge all of the stories together and not let it feel like any of them were left behind. Norm's one was a bit sidelined, but by connecting Max, Thaddeus and Cooper together, it merged two stories into one, so there was a whole lot more screen time that was able to be filled. A moment that I absolutely loved in this episode was the way that the ending played out. When we had the flashback of Cooper meeting with the president and the Congresswoman, and in the present day with it cutting to Lucy running to the mainframe and then opening the door and seeing her head, it was such a perfect reveal. I also felt bad for her because even though she is quite weak, she didn't deserve that. Now, I have slated the story inside of the vaults whenever they've been on screen, but in this episode, I wasn't counting down the minutes until it cut to the wasteland or Vegas. I feel like that came from the fact that we actually got to learn a little bit more about Steph, her motives, and the deceiving nature that she had. When Chet stood up to her, I was proud of him because all she's ever done is treated him like dirt, so I am intrigued to see if she's going to get her comeuppance. I do, however, feel like the fact that she got her hands on Hank's box is going to tie into the fact that it could be too late and she might be able to cause some kind of devastation. Lucy's arc was one that, even though it was quite intimate in this episode and it felt like she spent a lot of time in her mind, it was extremely immersive, and when looking back, it's almost as if we could hear her thoughts, which I know we couldn't, but I think it's because her facial expressions and her eyes were just so easy to read. I thought she was definitely going to be on the side of Hank and she was going to have changed, so I like that she returned to her roots in this one. As well as that, a scene that I absolutely loved was when Max, Thaddeus, and Cooper walked around the corner in Vegas. They just looked their absolute business. The line where Max said, "You always end up back where you started," was quite a powerful one too. It not only connected to Max being in the suit, but it also connected to Cooper going to Vegas all of those years later. I do still stand by the fact that I would have liked all of the episodes released at once, but I think the story has gotten better as the season's gone on, so I'm not feeling the weight of it as much. I also thought it was quite interesting that Fallout changed their release time this week. I've never known a show to change its release date, release time, and schedule so much. It's good that we've got the fluidity to do that, but I don't know if it just screams of a lack of planning and confusion behind the scenes. Regardless of that, with only one episode to go until the finale now, I'm expecting something big, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen. So, there you have it, Fallout Season 2 Episode 7, Ending Explained. If you want to see every episode of Fallout Season 2 being broken down, then check the playlist below, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. What did you think of this episode? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video, and I'll see you in the next one.